There is a sound that is only born in the absence of all others. It's a low, constant hum that fills the voids, one you only truly notice in the absolute silence of the early morning hours. When the house is asleep and the world outside has gone still, it's almost a vibration, a deep and infinite note that seems to emanate from the walls themselves, from the floor, from the very air. Science has names for it. Tinnitus, the doctors say, a ghost generated by your own auditory system. The electrical wiring, the engineers suggest, the invisible pulse of the energy that surrounds us. These are logical, comfortable explanations. They allow us to hear the hum, frown for a moment, and then go back to sleep, secure in our world of cause and effect. But what if it's none of those things? What if the explanations are just a way to calm ourselves in the face of something we do understand? What if the sound isn't just in the environment, but is searching for something in you, a compatible frequency, a soul that can resonate with it? This was the obsession that consumed the life and disappearance of Dr. Alistair Finch. Dr. Finch was a brilliant, yet obsessed acoustic researcher who dedicated the end of his career to investigating unexplained humming phenomena around the globe. In 1998, he set up a remote research station in an isolated location, determined to capture and dissect the source of one of these sounds. His goal was not to prove the supernatural, but to debunk it with the cold logic of science. His journals, recovered years later amidst the wreckage of his abandoned station, tell a different story. October 17, 1998. I've finally isolated it. The frequency is persistent, approximately 33 Hz. But that's not the interesting part. There is a pattern within it. Not a message, not a language, but a kind of rhythmic modulation, almost a signature. It doesn't behave like any known sound wave. It doesn't decay over distance in a predictable way. Sometimes it feels closer. It's illogical, I know. October 24th, 1998, the equipment registers no change, but I can feel it. The resonance. I feel as if it's no longer just in the air. I feel as if it's in the bones of this place. Sometimes, I find myself humming along to its melody without realizing. My assistant David left this morning. Said he couldn't stand the pressure in his head. He said the silence was worse than the noise. In this passage, Finch describes what a few other researchers would call the first stage of terror in resonance. It is when the mind stops processing the sound as something external and begins to feel it as an internal vibration. It is the moment the frequency finds something compatible within the listener and begins to attune itself to them. Finch believed the sound wasn't a product of our world, but an echo, the echo of something vast and ancient, whose resonance was so powerful that it was still vibrating through the fabric of reality, like the ringing of a bell struck eons ago. The last entry in Finch's journal is nearly the handwriting frantic, stained by the rain that had come in through a broken window at the station. Date unknown. It's always here now, the hum. It's not just a sound, it's a rarefaction. The walls. If I stare at the corner of the room long enough, it's like I can see through it just for a second. The resonance isn't just a vibration, it's an erosion. It's eroding the barrier, and the things on the other side. They're silent. They make no sound, but they're starting to look through the crack. They know I can hear them. The hum is the sound of the door opening. My God, the hum is... The entry ends there, with a long stroke of the pen that tears through the page. Dr. Finch and his research vanished, leaving behind only some damaged equipment, and a journal that tells an impossible story. Years later, a journalist named Juliana, who specialized in cold cases and unsolved mysteries, found Finch's story, intrigued by the abrupt nature of his disappearance. She used her connections to gain access to the site of the abandoned station. The scene she found was one of disturbing stillness. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, yet nothing seemed out of place, except for the broken window and the oppressive feeling that the air itself was heavy, dense. It was she who found the journal, tucked away inside a metal box. She read it right there, sitting in Finch's rusted chair as the afternoon faded. Her initial skepticism gave way to a morbid fascination. As she read the last page, a chill ran down her spine. The silence of the abandoned station seemed to change. For the first time, she noticed it, a low, almost imperceptible sound. A hum. She dismissed it as the wind, as her own mind playing tricks on her. But as she put the journal away and walked back to her car, she felt something she didn't expect. It wasn't fear, but a strange, unexplainable desire to hear the sound one more time. It was like an unfinished melody begging to be resolved. Without knowing it, she had accepted the invitation. Back in her city life, Juliana immersed herself in the research. The resonance wasn't tied to the location, she realized, but to the knowledge. The act of reading the journal, of delving into Finch's obsession, was what opened the door. She digitized the audio tapes recovered from the station and spent sleepless nights with headphones on, trying to decipher the pattern Finch had described. And then the hum started to follow her. First, in the quiet moments in her apartment, then layered over the noise of the traffic outside. It was subtle, but always present. With it came the other effects. Slight dizziness, the constant feeling of being watched, even when she was locked inside her home. And most disturbing of all, distortions at the edge of her vision, a shimmering tremor in the air, a shadow that moved too fast to be seen directly. Finch's melody was contagious, and now she was permanently tuned to the frequency of the impossible. The real terror began when Juliana realized she wasn't alone. She started seeing the others, people on the street, on the subway, in cafes. They didn't look different at first glance, but she recognized them. There was a sign, a vacant stare, focused on a point 1,000 yards away, a slight tilt of the head, as if they were listening intently to a conversation only they could perceive. They sought out quiet places, stopping in alleyways or sitting alone on park benches, motionless for long minutes. They were the choir. The other rest, they never interacted, never looked at each other, yet she could feel the connection between them, a silent, shared communion with the omnipresent hum. The horror was no longer about an entity or a monster in the dark. It was about the dissolution of the self. It was the fear of losing her individuality, her consciousness, to become just another anonymous voice in a silent, mindless chorus, all vibrating at the same dreadful frequency. Juliana fought it. She filled her life with noise, keeping the TV on, listening to loud music, avoiding silence at all costs. But it was useless. The hum was not a sound to be drowned out. It was an internal attunement. The external noise only made it clearer and stronger when it inevitably found a gap. Her desperate research led her to Finch's final, fragmented theory. The resonance doesn't just erode reality, it prepares it. It tunes a place or a person for the arrival of the maestros of this macabre symphony, the silent things on the other side. On a Thursday night, Juliana's fight ended. Sitting in her living room, she watched the city noise outside her window become distant, muffled, until it disappeared completely. In its place, the hum grew, filling everything, no longer as a sound, but as the only reality. Letting her phone ring unanswered on the table, she didn't move. The panic, the fear, the identity of Juliana had all dissolved into the vibration. She sat perfectly still, her body relaxed, her head slightly tilted. Her eyes, once filled with dread and curiosity, were now empty, serene, and fixed on nothing. She was no longer a journalist investigating a mystery. She was just another instrument in the orchestra, perfectly tuned. Patiently, along with the rest of the silent choir scattered across the world, she waited for the conductor to arrive. So, the next time you're in the silence of the night, and that familiar hum begins to fill the void, ask yourself what you're really hearing. Maybe it's just the refrigerator. Maybe it's just the blood rushing in your ears. Or maybe it's the orchestra tuning up for your first rehearsal. And the real question isn't if you can hear the hum, it's if it will, one day, hear you back.